Good evening, everyone. So we have with us our Central Council member CA Abhay Chajir and the faculties for today. CA Shivanisha will be taking up on passion, the profession. CA Meenakshi Gupta, who will be taking us through new Caro 2020. The coordinators, C Shweta Jain, who is happened to be the secretary WIRC, and CS Teha Varaya, along with our team of office, WMAC, C Shanu Goel, Ruchi Gupta, and others, C Jaya. And very good evening to all of you, friends. This is our series 3 Sky High Symposium, and as I already said earlier, in earlier 2 symposiums, that is it is our endeavor to serve the best to the members of our institute, and specifically this Sky High series for the women members. So we are giving platform to our CA women fraternity to share their knowledge through this Sky High series. So one technical topic, one non-technical topic, specifically for women. And with this, I request all of you, if you have any suggestions for the topic, as well as if you be part, I have received a lot of messages that some of the members want to become the coordinator as well as the speakers. So we would be happy to receive the same. So please suggest your inclination for being speaker or for being the coordinator, and any views also. We will be coming up through various other programs other than this Sky High series, like national conferences in various cities, and also the regional conferences, the conferences which will be hosted by the region. And this time we have CA Abhay Chajed from Central Region also with us, and he will be taking us through his words of wisdom when there will be the first end of the first speaker. So not taking much of time, and let us begin. I request CA Shweta Jain to please give the brief introduction of CA Shivanisha, who happened to be the gold medalist in her passion so over to CA Shweta Jain.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Preeti and WMEC committee, for giving me this opportunity. It's really been a pleasure for me. To introduce a very versatile personality, rather I should say, is Mrs. Shivani Shah. She is a chartered accountant and an Indian sportsman. She represented India at the International Kettlebell World Championship at Uzbekistan in 2018 and won the first gold medal for India in the category, and widely acknowledged as the first Indian woman to become a world champion in kettlebell sports. She further outclassed her own achievements in 2019 when she won the second gold medal in Australia, followed by third gold medal in France last year, November 21. So Shivani has been instrumental in building India's robust positioning in kettlebell, and the same has been acknowledged by the Indian government as well as its Supremo as well. Her achievements and efforts to bring glory to the nation have been acknowledged by our own Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji. So beside kettlebell, Shivani is a renowned chartered accountant, practicing member and national faculty for indirect taxation from our Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, and having delivered 250 plus sessions on the subject of indirect taxation across the country. So Shivani garnered a lot of praise for her recent TEDx speech as well, something that she delivered back in December 21. So she was conferred the Pride of Bengal Award 2012 alongside the like of Arnab Goswami, lender-based Arup Raha. So despite having a distinguished career as a practicing chartered accountant, she went on to pursue her passion in sports, and that has made all the difference. Time and again, she has been vocal about the need to promote new form of sports and how the recognition from the ministry and the government will go a long way in pushing more people to pursue their passion and break free from the age-old stereotype of sticking to the basics. So with this brief introduction, I welcome you, Shivani, on the platform of ICAI, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you. Am I audible, Shweta? Great.
Yes.
A very good evening to everyone, respected Central Council members, all my other members, office bearers, and everyone who's tuned in. A very, very good evening to all of you. It gives me immense pride that today I am addressing a very vibrant group of participants. Unfortunately, it's virtual, but I'm looking forward that someday maybe on this topic we can meet in person and take this forward. But nonetheless, I do express my thank you to the Institute of Chartered Accountants for giving me this platform to share in a few words my journey. As I said, it's a non-technical topic. I've had opportunities of many to speak about my journey at various platforms, but perhaps for the Institute, it's the first time I'll be speaking on a non-technical subject. The topic which was assigned to me was how do we pursue our passion along with profession. Mind you, it's not passion for the profession, because I'm sure many of us are very passionate chartered accountants. Many of us are professionals who are extremely go-getters in our respective fields. But nonetheless, today the session for me was how do we pursue passion along with profession. And also I'll request the organizers that if in case any queries come in the course of my deliberation, you may interject me and I would like to take them up in the course of my deliberation. So if I was to give you a brief for the uninitiated, let me first begin by telling you what is kettlebell. So kettlebell is basically a Russian sport, and it's called a kettlebell because of the shape of the equipment. You've got to lift the bell in specified time formats in specific variations. And then depending on how well you fare, you are basically decided whether you get to win the gold medal or not. Yes, I had the fortune of representing India thrice, and I'm looking forward to my fourth performance, which is in Greece in July this year. Many people ask me that why kettlebell? Thank you for the beautiful words, Shweta defined my CV in very kind and beautiful words. So honestly, life is very good as a chartered accountant. We all know that being a chartered accountant, you get the luxury and the privilege of interacting with the best brains in the country. So when we talk about a professional life, and much like yours, even mine is very much on track, a flourishing career in chartered accountancy. And as they say, when you have a career in GST, there's no looking back. Because ever since the inception of GST, there's been so many changes that this is literally, we are living the life of unlearning everything and then relearning. So as a chartered accountant, I'm very happy, and that gets me my bread, butter and jam. Coming to the next thing is, yes, I'm a mother. I'm a parent to a 6-year-old. I'm a wife to a very proud husband. I'm daughter to doting parents. So even my family life was well taken care of. Social life is the life we spend interacting with our extended family, our friends, etc. So why, friends, do I talk about my personal journey or about these different aspects of life? It's precisely because of this. You see, when a four-wheeled car is moving, if any one of the tires go flat, you know what would be the fate of the car. The car would get flat and the journey would be a bumpy one or not very comfortable. Likewise, the car of life moves on four wheels. One is our professional life. Second is our family life. Third is our social life, and fourth is our personal life. I just defined in brief the family life, social life, and the professional life. But what about our personal life? You know, I was all of about 19 when I qualified chartered accountancy. Life was good. And it was only when I became a mother at 35, I realized that there was something missing, something that I could call my own. What they call is your mojo. And that is when I chanced upon this beautiful sport of kettlebell. My journey into kettlebell lifting started precisely and only with an idea of losing postpartum weight. I was about 12 kgs up, and I thought, let me lose this weight. And I was someone who's not participated in a single sports event back in school. To name a few, not even March Past would be in the list. And unfortunately, we belong to institutions that believe in pushing just the person who's the best at it. So I was a backbencher when it came to extracurricular activities or any sport activities. And then I chanced upon this beautiful sport of kettlebells. I started lifting it just with an idea of losing weight. And because of the pressures at work, because of a nuclear family, because of having a small child, I couldn't manage and I called it quits. And then after a couple of weeks, someone gave me a call. I still remember it was a bright, sunny morning sometime in 2016, about March. My coach, my mentor called me and he said that, would you like to train home? और हमारी हिंदी में कहावत है ना, नेकी और पूछ पूछ. I said, why not, sir? And until then, believe me, the entire idea was just to lose weight. But probably, the mentor was, as they say, that you actually make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give. I repeat, you make a living by what you get, and you make a life by what you give. And my mentor did exactly that. I had absolutely no idea that I could be someone who would be engaged in a sports event, that I could be someone who would be holding the national flag high on foreign soil, that I could be someone for whom the national anthem would be played, and that I could be someone to whom the Prime Minister would write acknowledging the contribution to the nation about women empowerment, and how with dexterity, we as women fulfill different multiple roles. This all happened because my mentor, my coach, saw the spark in me and he thought that I should pursue it. So we started lifting bells only with the idea of fitness. And then I started living his dreams. All I did was to maintain a certain sense of discipline. And this discipline got me to where I am, representing India, getting the hat-trick gold for the country, and being at this esteemed platform speaking before all of you. So friends, while as women, in fact, prior to the deliberation, someone was mentioning that these virtual sessions are very convenient for women. And I do agree with that, because as women, we have multiple roles to play. But sometimes, there is a difference we need to make. And that difference lies between these different four wheels of life. While tossing a meal for your husband or preparing tiffin for your child or taking him or dropping him to school could be well a part of your life. That's your family life. Please do not mistake it for your personal life. It's very important as individuals we find the correct balance between the four wheels of life, which is our family life, our social life, our professional life, and our personal life. I found my calling into lifting kettlebells something that gets me immense amount of joy, and the only time probably my phone goes on an aeroplane mode other than when I'm traveling in an aircraft. So the first takeaway from this session, if I could give to any one of you, and I would say that it's a job well done, if I could inspire through these few words today, even one of you today. And I have mentioned about kettlebell, but probably if you Google kettlebells or Shivani Agarwal kettlebell, you'll get a lot of data. So you'll exactly know what does kettlebell look like and what is the sport like. So having spoken about the four wheels of life, I would like to emphasize on the importance and the significance of mentorship. Many times we have certain attributes in us, certain skill sets, certain qualities, which we ourselves not aware of. So mentors help us discover that facet of our personality which is hidden from us, which is something that we can take immense pride in, something that we can hone. And you never know that you get an opportunity to represent the country and make it big. So the second thing I would like to emphasize was, sorry for my voice, was on mentorship. Now, many times, many people ask me that, Shivani, how do you multitask? And as women, I'm sure a lot of us are very, very aware of these questions. You are a parent, you are a wife, you are a professional, and etc., etc. So to my mind, friends, honestly, there is no concept of multitasking. Multitasking, honestly, is like chains of gold. And research has proven that human mind is not capable of processing information-rich input simultaneously. So people who actually claim to multitask are probably far more inefficient, because each time you are interrupted in a task, you are leading yourself to be 50% more inefficient, and you would also take 50% longer in achieving that particular task. So for me, if someone asks me, is it multitasking? I would say absolute no. So if it's not multitasking, what is it? How do I find time? I always talk about decluttering. I chanced upon this beautiful concept of decluttering, which is basically a Japanese art of tidying up. When you tidy up, not by location, but by category. And you could start by tidying up your desk at office, your almirah in the house, your papers, your books, and then gradually move on to the sentimental items. Now, believe me, this concept is so dynamic that if you apply it, it could have a very far-reaching impact both on your lifestyle and your perspective. So basically, decluttering is an art of tidying up where you discard everything that no longer brings you joy. So in today's life and age where everything is moving so fast, say for example, if you have an Amazon app, everything around is trying to sell you. Everyone around is trying to sell you. So it's very, very normal for us to just go at a click of a few buttons, you buy something. But while we also buy unconsciously, it's very important for us to understand how to declutter. And when you apply this simple process in life of decluttering to your life, so we spoke about as simple as cleaning your desktop or, the screen of your laptop, from cleaning your cupboard to your office table. When you apply these tidying up concepts in life and try to do away with everything which is non-essential, at least in my journey, this has really, really helped me. We spoke about, the wheels of life. I'm sure many of us have watched the movie Diwar, and it reminds me of the very famous dialogue of Amitabh Bachchan. And he tells Shashi Kapoor, मेरे पास पैसा है, बंगला है, गाड़ी है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? And Shashi Kapoor replies, मेरे पास माँ है. On a lighter note, in 2022, if you were to replay this dialogue, Amitabh would say, मेरे पास Lamborghini है, Audi है, Maserati है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? And probably Shashi Kapoor would say, मेरे पास parking space है. So that was definitely on a lighter note, but if I was to talk about car, car, I do not mean the literal sense of the word. Car here to me implies an acronym. C. C means change. Change everything that you feel is not correct. Like I have a very bad throat, as you all know, and this has been going on for a week now. I've tried allopathy, homeopathy, naturopathy, even Tirupati, but nothing seems to work. If any one of you have anything to suggest, I would love to try that. So that is the kind of change where you are willing to change what you think is not right. So that change or that courage to change is very important. A is acceptance. Acceptance is while we strive for change, if you can accept certain things, you cannot change. Example, an aunt of mine was detected with cancer about a couple of years back. And, unfortunately she expired. So while we tried everything in our capacity, we knew that we could not change it. And we could not change it, so we had to accept it. So there comes in the concept of acceptance. That is, while we strive to change, is there certain things or are there certain things that we can accept? Then comes R. Now R in my life stands for two things. One, R means removing yourself from a certain situation. I had a friend who got married, and 6 months into marriage, she discovered that her husband was gay. While anyone's sexual preferences are absolutely their priorities, But to this friend of mine, she could not either change her husband, neither could she accept it. So she filed for a divorce and she removed herself from the situation. And that is exactly what I imply by removing yourself from a certain situation. And our friends could also imply rising above. Ruchi mentioned that last year around I was in France for my World Championship. Like any other tourist, I also went to see the Eiffel Tower. And when I went to see the tower, it was larger than life, huge, and it felt so enormous. But when after 2 days I was taking a flight back and up from the aircraft, you see the same Eiffel Tower, it appears so small. So the Eiffel Tower certainly hasn't shrunk. But yes, as and how I rose above, the Eiffel Tower started getting smaller. That means in certain situations, when you rise above, the problem or the situation may mean smaller or may imply smaller as and how you start rising above. And that is the R in the car of my life. So while C stands for change, A stands for acceptance, R stands from removing yourself from a certain situation or rising above a certain situation. So this is something I really wanted to share with you, because this, when applied to life, again, can have a very dramatic change in your perspective to life. Again, many people ask me that what is it that has helped you achieve the success that you have? And I always say one thing, that the one formula that never ceases to yield results is hard work, and more hard work. And you know, when I say hard work, I also imply smart work, which includes an immense amount of planning, strategizing, etc., etc. And this reminds me of a quote by Warren Buffett, who once said that you need not be smarter than the rest, you just need to be a little more disciplined than the rest. Because when you get a certain sense of discipline, that discipline helps you achieve a certain mastery over your thoughts. And that mastery helps you achieve a lot of goals which otherwise you can't. And believe me, friends, what I realize is that the pain of discipline is far lower than the pain of regret. Talking about hard work, obviously, as I said, that is something, you know, you need to, like even in our kettlebells, we just practice, and practice. So let me, end my talk with a small anecdote. So there was this one marble statue on a tile in a museum in France, and they had a conversation amongst themselves. So whoever used to enter the museum, they used to look in awe at the statue. And anyone who used to actually go to the museum used to just step on the tiles. So the tile told the statue that, hey statue, why is it that every time people come, they look in awe at you and everyone has such good words of praise for you, whereas whenever they look at me, they just walk over me. So the statue paused for a minute and said that, hey, are we not from the same cave? So the tile said, absolutely, we are. And that is the reason why I feel all the more ashamed and bad. So then the statue said, you remember that the sculptor was trying to work on both of us with his tools? So the tile said, absolutely, and how I despised him. So the statue said, I did not despise him and I allowed him to work on me. And because he worked on me, here I am today. In other words, friends, life is also like a sculptor, which through its good and bad moments shape us. I chose to be the statue in my story, and that is the reason why I am here today. I would not be standing, at this platform giving a deliberation had it not been for these few concepts in life, which I keep applying over and over again. And also, I always say one thing, that courage is something we all need to have, especially as women. And courage, my friends, is not absence of fear. Courage is resistance to fear. I read a little and I came across this one quote by Mark Twain where he says that courage is not absence of fear. Courage is mastery over fear. Courage is resistance over fear. And anyone who says that he or she is not scared is absolutely lying. In life, there are situations where we are scared. All we need is a little bit of courage. And as very, very nicely coined by Sri Harivansh Rai Bachchan in his poem, where he says that लहरों से डरकर नौका पार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की हार नहीं होती. Just in a few words, I wanted to share this with all of you. And thank you so much for having me over. And I look forward to gracing this platform yet again, maybe for a technical or a non-technical subject. I'll be very happy if any one of you have any questions. Over to you, Ruchi. Ruchi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Sneha, ma'am, will ask.
Thank you, Shivani, ma'am.
Next 5 minutes, we can take the questions. Sneha?
Yes, ma'am. Shivani, ma'am, there is one suggestion from one of the members that take fried salted badam every day. That will help your throat.
Okay. Thank you. That is one thing I'm really going to do. Thank you so much, whoever sent that.
That has been
extremely
said
grateful.
again by Miss Fatima.
Thank you, Fatima. Thank you so much.
Okay. One of the question is, you would have also faced a problem in giggling between your profession and passion, and many problems would have arisen. How did you gain that courage to overcome that?
See, who's asked me that question, Sneha?
That has been asked by Miss Ami.
Okay, whoever it is, and I just wanted to make it personal, hence I was asking for the name. See, I understand that challenges, as I said, it's a part and parcel of life, and the deal is that we need to face it with courage and rise above those challenges. So I spoke about the wheels of life. I realized that while my family, social, and my professional life are being well taken care of, I needed to work on the personal wheel of life. And also the car I spoke about, change, accept, rise above. One thing I realized that, if there is something on your priority, you'll end up doing it. So you don't really prioritize your schedules, you schedule your priorities. I have a small child who's 6 now. When I started lifting bells, he wasn't even 1 year old. I had a child who used to knock crying on the door, Mama, let me in. But I knew that this was the time I need to dedicate only to lifting of bells. I will not attend to client calls. I will not attend to a crying baby. So hence, I think that kind of discipline is very, very important. And I belong to a fairly conservative family where it took me a long while to even tell them that my coach was a male. It took me a long while to even come in a pair of shorts before my coach, because in kettlebell sport, the lifting attire is such that 3/4 of your legs need to be seen. From a Marwari community, it was a big deal for me to tell my parents, or for that matter, anyone that I'm traveling that for a sports event was a very big deal, to now where I can just tell my parents or my husband that, hey, I'm going for a world championship. My journey has definitely been a long, long one. It would not have been possible without the support of my husband and my family. But most importantly, people can only show you the way. Like my mentor showed me the way, but you need to, through a lot of resilience, courage, and self-talk, need to tell yourself that if this is it, it has to be done this way. So I think if it's on your priority, you'll always find time to do it. And courage to करने से आ ही जाता है. और धीरे धीरे, and final, as they say, the final validation was when Modi ji wrote to me in detail, and it wasn't a letter by the office of the PMO, it was a personal handwritten letter by our Honorable Prime Minister. And he spoke at length about how women are playing multiple roles, and how about with dexterity, I'm a mom, a chartered accountant, and an athlete. I think that was the final validation, and you only strive to work more and more hard to get, more glory to your nation.
And I can say that an excellent message which Shivani you have given to all the participants, and I would like to add that how the courage and the car example what you have given. So I can add to that is all about 3D. So that is we like the 3D movies because then something is coming to us. So these 3Ds are like a desire, determination, and dedication. So if you desire something and dedicate yourself for the things to achieve, the success is all yours. And that is what you can achieve, the whatever passion you have. So that is what all about.
Right.
Okay. So thank you so much, CA Shivanisha, for this wonderful session. I'm sure Your session has inspired to each one of present here. We as a chartered accountant are so busy with complying various due dates of income tax, GST, Companies Act and many more laws, but we forget our passion with the profession, as you said, in routine, and live a very monotonous kind of a life. But you have reminded us that having passion in the life gives a positive energy to live a healthy life and also be more energetic in routine life too. Also, your concept of CAR was like a icing on the cake for us. So here, I, on behalf of Women's Member Empowerment Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, present heartily vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sneha. Thank you, the chairperson. Thank you, everyone, for having me over. It was indeed a pleasure. And I look forward to meeting all of you in person so that it can be a more insightful session. And yes, if any one of you also, I'm sure all of us are passionate lot, but as Preeti rightly mentioned, I'm not too sure whether the life is monotonous, but if you could find any one passion which could be as simple as pursuing a sport, playing a musical instrument, taking a walk in the woods, you never know. You may be representing the country one day in some event.
Great.
Yes.
Now we have, thank you very much, Shivani.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So now we have with us our Central Council member, C. Abhay Kumar Chhajer. Abhay Kumar Chhajer ji is the Vice Chairman of Accounting Standard Board, Tax Audit Review Quality Board, FRRB, and one of the very important committee is a member is the Executive Committee. And we are very thankful to Abhay ji. In spite of his busy schedule, he is there with us to address the gathering and for the very near and dear subject to him, which is CARO 2020. So I request Mr. Abhay Chhajer to please share his words of wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Preeti, Central Council member, the Vice Chairperson of Women Members Empowerment Committee, and the Corporate Law, the Corporate Governance, and I think many more committees. You've been representing the Institute and doing an excellent job. So I want to congratulate for whatever work you've done so far for the past 2 months as Council members. So your contribution is tremendous. The speakers today, Madam Meenakshi will be taking us through the very important CARO 2020, which is applicable for the financial year 21-22. And I think it's a very good opportunity for every member attending this webinar virtually, because I think that is the best way where we can do it quickly at the right time of the year, and still, members can learn and raise their issues, which could be discussed by the eminent speakers. Of course, the speaker who already spoke, Shivani, the CS Shivani, I would say, but of course, your passion, you heard your 20-25 minutes, what you spoke was excellent and was very energetic. And I'm sure, I'm also was privileged to be part of this. I would say, I'm not sure how many male participants are there in this program, but I was fortunate to be here because I can see only myself and out of the 8 which is there. But it was pleasure listening to you and your passion, and congratulations for whatever you've done for last so many years and all the future endeavors you will pursue in your passion. And I wish you all the very best. Shweta, the secretary of WRC, of course, seeing her on virtual for the first time, would definitely have an opportunity to see her in future in person also. And Ruchi Gupta, the CS Neha, and the Secretariat of the Women Empowerment, and all the participants. Good evening to each one, and for sparing your valuable time. And I think it's most important that we are here for CARO today. And CARO is a very important topic, and I was asked to address, in a session where it's for women and by women. So I would say it's a privilege for me, and thanks to Preeti Madam for giving me this opportunity. And I would not take much time, just was happy to, just share a couple of, initial remarks before Meenakshi Madam takes us through all the clauses of CARO. Of course, initially Caro was made applicable from 1st April 2019 and then got again postponed till 1st April 2020. And then wide notification, again, it was made applicable from 1st April 21. So there are a lot of extension which was done, but now finally each one of us for specified entities, Caro is made applicable. You have to have Caro made this year for the audits you do for specified entities where Caro is applicable for 21-22. And a lot of, responsibility onus was given to auditors now. 21, you see the clauses are there. There are new clauses which have been added. There are old clauses which are modified. There are clauses which have been added back. 2 clauses, if I talk about, which have been added back, which was there in Caro 2003. So you can imagine, even, 20 years back, a clause which was there is now brought in back in Caro, looking to the importance and, the responsibility which has been given to the auditors to report on such clauses. So 21 and plus the sub clauses where each point you have to report. There is 41 sub clauses which have to be commented upon. Just to quickly share some of the important changes, because we know that the Schedule 3 also got amended. Now, because of this, the Caro, again, the reporting requirement has increased. There are a lot of disclosures which has to be done. Schedule 3 disclosures requirements have been implemented. Even Caro now reporting has to be done based on the amendments which are done in the Schedule 3. Majorly, if I talk about, the title deeds, we know that we have been reporting title deeds, but now there has to be a detailed description of properties, the assets, the description of property, the assets being held in whose name, whether promoters, directors, all have to be specifically mentioned and disclosed in title deeds, the immovable properties which is held by the company. So there is reporting requirement under this clause which is been modified, and there is additional requirement to be presented under Caro. Benami property, again, that is one clause which has been added and where disclosure requirement has to be done. Even, if you see the Schedule 3, of course, which is applicable now, we are also coming up with a guidance note. We are amending the guidance note 2020, which was already released. Now, based on these changes, we are amending the guidance note 2020. And I believe by next 45 days to 60 days, we'll have this guidance note being amended. Of course, there is an announcement which has already been published on the ICI website. If you go to the ICI website, there was an announcement done on 1st of April 2022, wherein you'll see that wherever the Schedule 3 clause amendments which are done and how it will impact our reporting requirement or disclosures in terms of Caro, there is a presentation which is done on the website. So wherever there is a clause, about 13 clauses which are being revised, modified, newly added, what is the impact on Schedule 3, how it has to be disclosed. There is a comparative which has been done in the announcement for accessibility to the members and to the auditors to understand that not, but just the Caro, it's also the Schedule 3 which has to be looked at, because there are, more additional requirements of disclosures in Caro. So please see that announcement, the disclosure requirements, the Schedule 3 amendments, and what is the primary difference where, there is a requirement of Schedule 3, I would say, in terms of loan. Now, in Caro, it specifically talks about the working capital loans above 5 crores, which has to be commented upon. But if you go to the Schedule 3, you find it talks about all the borrowings. So, like this, there are 13 clauses which have been mentioned in the announcement, and I would request all the participants to have a look to the announcement, and based on the announcement and further, the study group which is working on each clause of Caro, we will come up with the guidance note very soon in the interest of the members at large and the auditors, so that reporting can be done appropriately, disclosures can be done, because even CSR, there are changes how disclosures have to be done. Internal audit, if you remember, 2003 Caro internal audit system was to be commented upon. Now that has come back and now has to be reported. So a lot of, modifications, new clauses which have been added. couple of clauses which were earlier there and now been added. So I'm sure our eminent speaker, Meenakshi Madam, would be covering all such clauses one by one. And members would definitely be benefited with her practical exposure. And I'm sure, having Sneha, Ruchi and the Shweta Madam who would take care of all these questions which are raised, members, participants would definitely be benefited and will have practical issues which would be attended by Madam Meenakshi Madam and would be responded well. So thank you so much, the committee and Preeti Madam and everybody who's given me this opportunity to be part of this very important Wednesday for women and by women. And it's a privilege and opportunity for me to be here. And anytime I'm available for any such sessions if required in future. And it's always been my privilege and been an honor to be here. So I wish each participants to have, a happy learning for next 1.5 hours, which we have through the virtual. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abhayji, for your address. This really matters a lot for all the participants. As a Central Council member, you are here. From this, you are representing the Central Region, and a lot of our participants belong to Central Region also. So thank you very much, and we'll definitely take your support in future in all our endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now I request CS Neha Varaya, my dear friend coordinator, to introduce CS Meenakshi Gupta, our speaker for the forthcoming session on New Caro 2020. Over to Sneha.
Thank you, Preeti ma'am. It's my privilege to introduce CA Meenakshi Gupta ji. She possesses 21 years of strong cross-functioning knowledge, people management, and interpersonal skills for the operations, excellence, and business development. She cleared her CA finals in first attempt in November 1998 and also pursuing visa. Her strengths are extensive experience in auditing of a big size organization, including companies and partnership firms, drive continuous process improvements and quality initiatives, including streamlining teams, excellent interpersonal communication skills, result-oriented, focused approach. She is presently practicing as a partner in Gupta, Rustagi and Company since Jan 2008 and had also worked 5 years in auditing and assurance function at Deloitte, which is a Big Four. Extensive study in Ind AS and applicability in various companies during conversation stage. She has a list of achievements, among them QR. She is a core committee of WELL, that is Women Entrepreneurs Learn to Lead. Speakers in seminars conducted at various forums, study circles, WELL, etc. on a wide range of topics such as ICDS, demonetization, GST implementation, auditing standards, Ind AS, and many more. Coordinator in various WRC seminars, being a member of Corporate and Allied Laws Committee in WRC for 1920 and contributed in few publications of the committee. In 2020-21, she is nominated member of Women Empowerment Members Committee of WRC, reviewer of publications of WMEC Committee of ICAI, associated with Training Academy, namely Gnanation Academic LLP, with an object to conduct seminars, training sessions on various technical matters concerning our profession. With this brief introduction of CA Meenakshi Gupta, I welcome her with a loud round of applause.
Thank you so much, Sneha, for brief but not so brief introduction. It is a pleasure for me. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Central Council members CA Preeti Savla and CA Abhay Chhajar, then the various coordinators and technical team of ICAI to take this forward, this sky-high symposium, which is indeed which will give a lot of benefit to women members. And I will not take much of my time in starting the topic, because topic is very new and it needs really good insight, because it has been made applicable from the current financial year, for which the audits have already begun. And many listed companies have already started bringing their annual reports. So, very soon we will be able to see the application of CARO 2020 by various companies when their public annual reports are out. And for small-time practitioners or rather mid-sized firms, it will be a very good insight when they view the various annual audit reports of various companies. But prior to that, we should understand as our earlier speaker Shivanisha already spoke, that need is the change. Change is the need of the hour. So our institute, our government has recognized that fact, and they have brought several changes in CARO. From last so many years, from 2006, because basically CARO 2006 was made applicable, and then CARO 2020 has been introduced. So you can understand the time gap is of almost 14 years, though the applicability has taken much more time because the name is CARO 2020, but it is becoming applicable from the current financial year. That was because of the pandemic and the lockdown issues, and then the lack of training of CAs. Our government postponed this, the applicability, and the CA Institute, as usual, is very proactive in bringing the guidance note. So I will request everybody to, before they apply CARO 2020, they should go deeply into in the guidance note. It will give a lot of insight on how to, apply CARO 2020. So as already our Central Council member CA Adhirji has mentioned, earlier there were 21 clauses. Now 7 new clauses have been inserted. Various other clauses have been expanded. So before that, I'll just share my screen so that, you can have a view of my deliberation. So the coordinators can just tell me that, it is visible. The screen is visible.
It's visible.
Okay, thank you. So as already our Central Council member has mentioned the background of CARO 2020, the MCA has notified this CARO on Feb 20, but it is made applicable only from 1st April 2021. So all the audits which commence from 1st April 2021, this CARO 2020 will become applicable. It has a lot of additional reporting requirements. When the NAFRA was consulted, and why this change was brought in is because that the red flag is initiated because there were so many NPAs, there were so many bad loans which came into picture, and so many companies moved into bankruptcy. ID has become the need of the hour because of these bad loans, NPAs. So this red flag has to be flagged by the auditors. Auditors are always looked at people who will, bring the necessary signal that the company is not functioning properly or what is going wrong in the company. So all this has been brought into CARO. So many things which were not earlier in CARO ever. It used to be, the auditors obviously proactively used to give that in the audit reports. But now so many things have been mandatorily included in CARO. So this is one good thing where, the things which were not mandatorily required to be reported will now become mandatory because of its inclusion in CARO. So 7 new clauses have been inserted, existing clauses have been redrafted, and 1 or 2 clauses have been merged, and 1 clause has been deleted, which was not considered probably necessary, or it has been reported elsewhere. So now we will move to I will not read this, the CARO 2020 is applicable because the applicability to entities remains same. It has not changed from the previously circulated, the applicability clauses. It is still not applicable to one-person companies, small companies, certain specified private companies that you can see on the presentation, then charitable purpose banking companies, insurance companies. So it is just the same. So we will move ahead and we'll go clause by clause wherever the changes have been introduced. So the first clause where the change has been introduced is property, plant and equipment. Now the name itself gives you, we always used to say the clause which is on fixed assets. So the major change which has been introduced in this particular clause is that fixed assets have been replaced with the word property, plant and equipment, which is the terminology used worldwide. Even in India, we do not have anything called fixed assets. It's always PPE. Property, plant and equipment. So that is the one major change. Secondly, they have introduced about whether intangible assets. You have to report about the intangible assets, which was not there in the earlier fixed asset clause. So probably this would have got skipped now, since intangible assets is also a major addition in so many companies like the software companies, or the companies which are dealing with technology, definitely that is a sizable amount which is the part of the balance sheet. Then regarding the physical verification, the clause is same. Regular intervals, the PPE has to be verified, so there is no major change in that. Now, the second major change which is there in the same clause is regarding the title deeds of immovable properties. As earlier Chajarji mentioned, that wherever the property is not in the name of the company, so what disclosures are required to be made by the auditors in CARO are specifically stated here. As you can see, the following details have to be wherever the problem is, wherever the name is immovable property is not in the name of the company. Basically, you have to describe the property, gross carrying value, asset held in the name of, whether it is held in the name of promoter, any relative or employee, for which period the immovable property is not held in the company's name, reason why it is not held in the company name, because there can be some legal issues. So we have to, if you see, the legal issues, I'll just straight move to the auditor's approach. So legal issues means, sometimes what happens that there are some matters where transfer has got some problem, like the transfer cannot be made because there is some legal matter pending in the court. So those have to be evaluated and that reason is to be given. Now, third major change is regarding that Benami property. Whether any proceedings are pending against the company for any Benami property, and if so, it has to be appropriately disclosed in its financial statements. So that has to be also mentioned in CARO. So I have given some, I don't know whether this PPT will be circulated, but if you can just briefly read through my screen, various auditors' approach has been given in the presentation, where you can consider the documentation maintained by management to identify any discrepancy found should be properly documented. You may obtain support of legal expert in case of dispute or litigation in the title of immovable property. Then fair valuation of PPE has been, there are certain revaluation which is not to be included. The major changes regarding the revaluation. If any revaluation of CPE has been done, so that also has to be reported in CARO. Then I think second clause is for inventories. Inventories, earlier it used to be a very small clause where we had to report on whether it is physical verification of inventories conducted at reasonable intervals. Now we have to also comment on the coverage and procedure adopted by the management for conducting physical verification, whether that is appropriate or not. Because sometimes physical verification is conducted, but the procedure is not adequate. So that has to be commented upon, and then discrepancy is more than 10% in aggregate, that has to be reported. Then this is a newly introduced clause where the company has been sanctioned working capital limits in excess of 5 crores. So first of all, this clause becomes applicable only if working capital limit is more than 5 crores. So then only we will come into this particular clause. And what we have to verify, which is a very unique thing which has been introduced, it is an external reporting which the companies make to the banks or the financial institutions regarding basically the quarterly returns which are filed by the banks or financial by the companies to the banks and the financial institutions, whether they are in line with the financial statements or not. This has been earlier seen in many cases that where the bank frauds has happened, that quarterly returns which are submitted to the banks are widely different from what is actually there in the books of accounts. So this came into it was followed because of that reason. So this is again, I will not go into the detail of this auditor's approach. Then the third clause is regarding investments, guarantees, security, loans and advances in nature of loans. So this also has been expanded widely. Earlier, it used to cover only loans to related parties, basically, because loans to companies, firms, LLP or other parties which are covered in register under section 189 of the Companies Act. So it is loans to related parties. Now, this has been expanded to include loans to any other entity. So it was not applicable earlier to any other entity. now it has become applicable for all loans given by the company. So we have to give in two segregation the details, basically the aggregate outstanding as at the balance sheet date. One is to the related parties, that is subsidiaries, associates and JVs, and second part will be aggregate of loans given to non-related parties. So this is one major change which has been introduced. Then obviously on the terms and conditions of the loans given, whether they are prejudicial to the interest of the company or not. So that is again to be reported upon here also. Then other two clauses are same which was there in the earlier CARO. So that we will not go into much detail because of paucity of time also. And then major clause which has been introduced is this clause where, which we call evergreening of loans. What is evergreening of loans? Is where some old loans are being renewed, they are extended or settled by fresh loans. So because new loans are taken in the guise of old loans, so this has to be specifically reported by the auditors, which was not earlier there. Because if a loan has been squared up, auditors never used to report. So here, if fresh loans are taken to settle the old loans, so that has to be mentioned here. Then another major change which is there is this is very important for mid-sized companies where loans are given repayable on demand. So there are no stipulations as to the repayment. So these loans have to be specifically commented upon, and separately we have to give details of whether loans are granted to promoters or related parties, as mentioned in section 276 of the Companies Act. So these have to be specifically disclosed. Other than the aggregate amounts will have to be disclosed, and then separately you have to say how much has been given to the promoters or other related parties. And now the auditor's approach, as you can see on your screens, you can obtain various representations from management because so many times we are not able to identify whether they are related parties or not. So because in large companies, lot of loans are given and the list is long. So if we obtain representation from management, it is good on the part of the auditors. And even if some loans are missed out by the auditor, this written representation will definitely help. Because the auditors on day-to-day basis does not know who are the related parties. So this is one very important aspect. Then various loan agreements have to be verified, where we'll come to know whether the terms of repayment are appropriate or not. Then repayable of demand, obviously you will come to know from that the terms and conditions. So this will give a good insight to the auditors. Now clause 4. There is no change at all. So it is in respect of loans, investments, guarantees and securities, whether they have been complied with section 185 and 186 of the Companies Act have been complied with or not. So there is no change. So I will not take this up. And it is just the same we have been doing for so many years. Now we will move forward to the changed clauses. Now, deposits clause, this is more or less the same, but one very important change which has been introduced in this particular clause is earlier it was the deposits which were taken by the deposit-taking companies. Now it is covering the deposits which are deemed deposits. So we all know that the companies have to file DPT-3, Form DPT-3 mandatorily, and there are a list of amounts which has been mentioned, which will be deemed to be deposit. It is mentioned here. So basically as an advance for supply of goods, if it is outstanding for more than 365 days, then if loans are taken in against immovable property and it is still lying in the books of accounts as advances, so they will be deemed to be deposits. A security deposit for performance of contracts. So all these amounts, all these nature of advances, you can verify, you can see in the books of accounts. And if they are deemed to be deposits, then we have to report here in this particular clause. So this has become a very important point. Earlier in most of the companies which are not accepting deposits, this clause used to be unimportant for those companies. Now, because of the introduction of this deemed deposit, this clause has become all the more very important. So I would like to flag this off categorically for all the prospective auditors that this clause should be really dealt with upon in a good way. So as you can see, the list is long. You can read the section and you can find out from 2(1)(c) of the company's acceptance of deposit that what amounts are covered as deemed to be deposits. So this is there. Then cost records, there is no change. Clause number 3(6), it is just the same. Where maintenance of cost records is specified by central government, you have to mention whether the books of accounts and records are maintained or not. So we will move straight to the statutory dues. This is also a very appropriate and apt change introduced by the in the RO is the introduction of goods and service tax. Earlier, I think many of the auditors have suo moto inserted goods and service tax here, seeing that the service tax has been and VAT has been replaced with goods and service tax. So this was just the formality to introduce this word goods and service tax, because already auditors were reporting on goods and service tax in this particular clause. Now it has been specifically included, to keeping in line with the act which has been introduced past in 2017. So the change has happened from CARO 2006 straight into 2020. So obviously this change will come now because GST came later. Then here also earlier, the other statutory dues were not mentioned that regarding the disputed dues. So here they have mentioned the statutory dues referred to in clause A. So basically all statutory dues are now covered. Now the companies cannot take the stand that you are not required to report on taxes other than the ones which are mentioned in CARO. So now all the statutory dues are basically covered. So there is no escape from this now. If any dispute is there, so the stakeholders will come to know from this particular clause. Then unrecorded. This is a totally new clause which was not there earlier. Now, we know that the government has introduced various schemes and, even the search and seizure search proceedings take place in many companies. So there, some income is required to be disclosed in the tax returns. So we have to undergo the tax assessments which have taken place. And if unrecorded item is there, unrecorded income is which was previously unrecorded, this has to be properly recorded in the books of accounts during the year. So it may so happen that the tax assessments takes place, the unrecorded income is found, the companies do the assessment, they pay the tax, but they will not record that and still in the books of accounts. So that cannot be done now. So because the reporting will come over here in case the item is not recorded. So basically we have to review the tax assessments which has been completed in the companies prior to signing, and if any surrendered or disclosed income relates to the audit period or prior periods also, that has to be obtained here. For that also we can obtain management representation that no such assessment was there or whether assessments were there, and then accordingly the disclosure will come. Then we come to the borrowings clause, which is 3(9), Roman 9, which was earlier 3(8), because the clause numbers have become different because of the introduction of clauses in between. So now regarding the borrowings earlier the borrowings by banks, from banks or government or debenture holders were only required to be reported. Now it's similarly like loans given to companies, related and non-related, both are included. Here also loans taken from these particular entities as well as from other entities. Everything will require to be reported over here. So wherever there is a default, obviously if there is no default, there is no problem. But if a default is there, then the certain details have to be disclosed in this reported in this particular CARO. Then there is new subclause which has been introduced, whether the company is declared a willful defaulter by any bank or financial institution or other lenders. So this was also introduced. Now various subclauses are introduced here. So this clause has been very widely expanded. So if the term loans are obtained for any particular purpose and the fund is being diverted by the company to maybe group companies or promoters or whoever, so here this particular disclosure will come in. So we have to see the applicability of term loans very carefully in the books of accounts, and we have to establish the fact that the term loans which were taken are applied for the purpose for which they are obtained. Now, second, this clause D, subclause D, this was earlier also there in probably, I think, Caro 2003, which has been reintroduced, that the funds raised on short-term basis have been utilized for long-term purposes. So this we can come to know from the, management, from the cash flow also we will come to know, because current and non-current everything is, we are disclosing. So this is also another reporting which is required to be done. Then this is another clause which is there if, to meet the obligations of subsidiaries, associates or joint ventures, if certain loans have been taken by the company. So those nature of transactions have to be disclosed here in each case. It is given in each case with amounts. So this is also a very important clause which happens many a times that, to meet the obligations of subsidiaries and other related parties, the company takes funds from any entity or any person. So this is an important clause here. Now, another thing is if company pledged its securities, the securities held in the subsidiaries, joint venture, associate companies. So those details also have to be given here, and whether any default is there in the repayment of such loans which has been raised by pledge of securities held in subsidiaries and joint ventures or associate companies. So these are very important changes. Now here also I've given some approach where, what documentation you can verify. Short-term funds utilized for long-term assets, you can come to know from the current ratio. If it is less than 1, then that is an indication of, short-term funds used for long-term purposes and vice versa. So this is, their cash flow statement will be important to verify here. Willful defaulter, obviously bank's management representation is necessary for that. Then all the list of subsidiaries will have to be taken and stuff like that, and we'll move forward. So this clause 310 has been made by merging two earlier clauses, clause 3.9 and clause 3.14. So earlier that these were two separate clauses where funds by way of IPO, if they're raised, whether they have been applied for the purposes for which they were raised. So this is the same, almost similar, almost same, except for introduction of the rights issue. If the shares have been issued as a rights issue, that compliance also has to be reported here. Earlier, it was not specifically mentioned here, but I think by way of preferential allotment of private placement of shares, auditors definitely used to cover earlier also. But here now specific inclusion has been made. So this is there. Then the non-compliance of these particular sections have to be reported here. This is the same thing, but only things have been first. Now frauds. This is one very, very major change which has been introduced here. Now auditors are obviously always required to report on the frauds first, because you have heard so many times if any fraud happens, then what was the auditor doing? So that is the first point comes in the mind of the stakeholder as well as the government officials. And rightly so, because auditors are the first people who look into the accounts, external people who look into the accounts of the company. So it becomes a moral responsibility on auditors to flag such issues. So earlier it was the frauds by the company or any fraud on the company by its officers or employees. That was categorically clearly stated in this particular clause. Now that word officers and employees has been removed and it has been written any person, any one. So any kind of fraud which happens in the company has to be reported upon, and that has to be indicated by the auditor. Now there are two sub clauses which has been introduced, which was not there in earlier clauses. If suppose the company has, the auditor has, there is one particular form which is required to be filed by the auditors with the company's audit, as per the company's audit rules. In 143.12, there is a form called ADT 4. So if any fraud is there and the auditor is mandatorily required to be reported in ADT 4, if such form has been filed by auditor, we have to disclose this in CARO as well. So only responsibility to file with the government does not end the responsibility of the auditor. It is now included in CARO, and rightly so. The stakeholders should definitely know if such thing has happened. Then obviously the whistleblower complaints which are received by the company. So those auditor has to consider if whether any consideration is required in the financial statements for these complaints. So that has to be taken care of. Here I have mentioned what checks can be conducted. Adequate procedures are there to handle the whistleblower, complaints and stuff like that. So this is management representation letter is obviously the most important tool. Then in the Nidhi Company clause 312, there is no major change except for one important change, that whether there has been any default in repayment of interest on deposits or repayment, then we have to disclose the period of default and various other details. This was not there in the earlier clause. So this becomes important for Nidhi companies. This additional disclosure is there. Then we come to there is no change in this clause of related party disclosures. This remains the same, which was there in CARO 2016. So now we come to the internal audit. Now this has been a reintroduction. It was there earlier in CARO 2003. Now it has been brought again in CARO 2020 because probably it was considered the need of the hour that the company is having an internal audit system which is commensurate with the size and nature of its business. Then the auditor needs to report upon that, and if in the internal audit reports any important aspect is there which needs to be covered under considered by the statutory auditors, that has to be reported here. So it is the old thing which has again come back. Rightly good. It's a good thing. Then this is just the mention of that only. Now non-cash transactions with directors, this is also the same clause, so it does not require any explanation. It is the same as the earlier CARO. Now registration under section 45 IA of the RBI Act. Earlier it was a very small clause where it was just mentioned whether the company is required to be registered with the RBI or not as an NBFC. We have to just mention that fact. Now, various subclauses has been introduced with respect to this, because if the company is conducting any non-banking financial activity without a valid certificate of registration, then you have to categorically report here. So this is an important clause because some companies are there which becomes the finance companies by way of, that I'll just go ahead and show you what is that. Management shall assess financial income to total operating income and financial assets to total assets at regular intervals if the ratio exceeds 50% for both the indicators. Then both these indicators have to be verified, and we have to then obtain registration with RBI. If it has not been reported, then this has to be reported here in this particular clause. Now, details about financial and lease transactions with other group companies without a valid certificate of registration must also be reported by the auditors. Now there is a terminology called core investment company. So this we have to verify whether the company is a core investment company as defined in the regulations made by our regulations mentioned in RBI. So those such unregistered CIC. The companies, whether how it is exempted or not, if it is still unregistered, that has to be reported. And then here we have to mention the fact that the group has more than one CIC in the company. So then we have to indicate the number of core investment companies which are part of the group. So this particular reporting comes into picture here. So as you can see, there are these three subclauses that company. So other than the normal reporting, these particular specific disclosures have to be made in CARO. We'll move forward in regarding then introduction of this particular clause. This is also a reintroduction of the earlier clause, which was dropped in CARO 2016. Now, because of there are so many companies, where this cash losses come into picture, net worth gets eroded, but those go unreported because of this mention of.
तो उनको एड्रेस के लिए बुलाना है ना, ठीक है. हेलो
Shweta ji, I think you have to be on mute. Sorry. Yeah, thanks. So whether the company has incurred cash losses in the financial year and in the immediately preceding financial year, if so, state the amount of cash losses. For new chartered accountants, this is a new clause, obviously. We were there earlier when the old clause CARO was there, so we know that this is a reintroduction. But now for the new practicing CAs or, the articles and even the newly qualified CAs, this is an important thing. So wherever there is a cash loss in the company on the immediately preceding basis has to be reported in CARO. Then how it is identified whether cash loss is there is obviously there are various indicators. Negative cash flow. Cash loss is indicative of negative cash flow. So cash flow statement has to be how it is. Cash loss is not defined here, but we all know that how the cash losses are identified. The profit or loss from the profit and loss statement is adjusted with the effects of non-cash items, like depreciation, amortization, deferred tax expenses, foreign exchange gain or loss. All these adjustments are made to the profit or loss from the profit and loss account, and from that, if there is a cash loss, then that has to be specifically reported. So it is a very important clause because it's a red flag for the stakeholders. Then we come to this is something which is a very new clause for everybody. If a previous auditor has resigned from the company, then the new auditor has to consider the issues, objections, and concerns raised by the outgoing auditors. So this is something which is a new thing which has been introduced, which was not there earlier. So we have to see this if you have been newly appointed. So it is very important for you to know why the earlier statutory auditors resigned. So that you will come to know if you obtain a copy of Annexure A, which is submitted, which is required to be submitted to SEBI. And from the minutes of the board meeting, audit committee meetings also, one can understand the reason of actual resignation of the previous auditor. And if required, you have to mention whether any important aspect needs to be, because we have seen in the past that some auditors were resigned because the books of accounts were not made available to them, or documentary evidences were not made available to them, or they were, not being able to conduct proper audits due to certain reasons. So these are very, very important reasons which requires to be considered by the incoming auditor, and that fact has to be disclosed over here, whether that has been now addressed by the management or not, or still the situation exists. So this is a very, very important clause from that aspect. Then we come to this is another new clause, completely new clause. Earlier also, the auditors used to, evaluate this aspect of liquidity by way of, we used to comment on the going concern always. So that used to form part of our main audit report, even though some specific inclusion was not there. As we all know, there are certain things which are required to be, which are existing in the company, going concern thing, then accrual concept. These are some things which are on which the core, the financial statements are, basically based, any company. But now, because of the specific reporting, it becomes all the more so important for the auditors that, and now this has become very easy for us also to establish whether, the liquidity is there in the company or not, because this important change has been introduced in disclosures in the financial statements by way of making a change in the Schedule 3 to the Companies Act. It is there, various ratios have to be disclosed, how these ratios have been derived, what is the formula used to derive at those ratios. So basically you can see just the notes of accounts and you will come to know whether any material uncertainty exists on the date of the audit report, whereby the company is not able to meet its liabilities existing at the balance sheet date. Now the various disclosures made in India's financial statements where the ALM has to be disclosed. So if the net of the ALM is negative, so immediately it becomes evident that there is a problem in the company and the company will not be able to meet its financial liabilities. So this clause will come into play where the auditor can easily state whether the liquidity is there or not. Then, here we have elaborated that how an auditor will come to know. So he will, on the basis of financial ratios, aging of assets, defaults in repayments, decline in worthiness, future commitments, erosion of net worth, increase of claims, contingent liabilities. So all these have to be detailed. Assessment has to be made regarding the future cash flows, because many a times management says that, the funds will be introduced by the group company or the sister company or the holding company, and then, the going concern will not get affected. But then that will not be sufficient probably For that, obviously, management letter, representation letters are being obtained by the auditors, but this is a very important test for the opinion on liquidity. So, as you can see, my last sentence, audit procedures should be developed in such a way that it keeps an eagle eye on the entity's financial health. So, as we all know, ICI logo, if you remember, it's an eagle. So here, the aspect of eagle should be really considered, and this is a red flag which can be flagged off for the investors. Now, this is another new clause which is required to be reported upon is CSR compliance. Earlier, this clause was not there, and only the board used to report on the corporate social responsibility compliance. This has become very important from the aspect that many companies are set aside. They are mentioning that CSR compliance has been done by way of, just giving a note in the notes to the accounts that this amount is required to be spent, and this is the amount which is spent, and that's the end of it. So auditors will now highlight how much amount, if there are certain projects, CSR projects running on. So there are various criteria given for ongoing projects and which are not there for any project. So if it is in respect of ongoing projects, then within a period of 6 months, either that has to be spent or otherwise that has to be specifically transferred to a specific reserve. That reserve is mentioned in Schedule 7 of the Companies Act. So within a period of 6 months that this amount should be transferred to that fund. And if it is not for any particular ongoing project, then within 3 months that has to be transferred to the reserve. So various supporting documents such as expenditure receipts, bank statements, then evaluation of the CSR planning, CSR committee meeting minutes should be evaluated. All this can be verified, and then if there is any, a non-compliance with respect to this particular clause, that can be reported over here. And okay, this is the last clause. I hope I am not too fast because I think I finished off too fast. Anyways, if any queries would be there, I'll be glad to take it up. This is also a new clause which is not to be reported by the auditors of the standalone financial statements, because it specifically talks about clause 21, talks about consolidated financial statements. So it is basically for the group auditor or the auditor of the holding company. So they have to evaluate the CARO reports of all the companies which are consolidated in the consolidated financial statements. And only this particular CARO, as we all know that for consolidated financial statements, CARO is generally not applicable. But wherever there are adverse remarks or qualifications in various financial statements which are being, considered for the consolidated financial statements, those have to be listed by the group auditor or the auditor of the consolidated financial statements. So this is an important addition. So principal auditor should mention even if the CARO reports of certain subsidiaries, unlisted some companies or at the associates are not there prepared till at the time of audit, that also can be mentioned over here. So the principal auditor has an added responsibility to examine all the audit reports of the companies which are included in the consolidated statements. So now this is not part of CARO, but in the main audit report, there is a few changes which has been made where we have to report on the funds advanced with reporting on funds advanced with understanding to invest as per arrangement with ultimate beneficiaries. So basically these are for the pass-through companies, which pass-through companies means, if certain funds are there given to certain companies to invest in further other companies who are the ultimate beneficiaries are different, then this particular reporting becomes relevant. Similarly, if the funds are received with the understanding to invest into another company, basically these are pass-through companies. If your company is a pass-through company, this will come into, in this loop. And this reporting has to be made in the main audit report. So basically an assertive statement is required from the auditors that, there are no material misstatement by the management for point number 1 and 2. Sometimes management says, no, these are not related, these are not whatever. But if you have a specific understanding or specific knowledge about whether these companies are covered under point 1 and 2, this has to be assertively stated. Then regarding dividends declared and paid, there's the compliance with section 123 of the Companies Act needs to be reported upon in the main audit report. One more clause which has been introduced for the new clauses regarding the audit trail thing, which has been deferred by the government because of the, I think, pandemic issue is one of the major reasons, and the technological challenge is another reason, because there are many softwares which are being used like Tally and even ERP. The audit trails are there, but then probably all the companies are not ready to comply with this particular clause, so this has been deferred to April 2022. But this will definitely come up. So all the companies have to gear up to maintain such audit log in the softwares which they are using. This is it, I think. Thank you. I would be ready to answer if any queries specifically are there, and I'm sure our Central Council member is also still there in the meeting, so he can also help me take up the queries.
Let me check first. Yeah. The more messages, superb session, very nice presentation.
I think I was a little fast, but then I thought that there are so many clauses, so I became more proactive and I really passed through my slides.
No. But it was, I think, quite comfortable. We can understand from you whatever you want to say. So share your presentation and everything. So that
is upon IECI or WMEC to how they will make it available to.
100%. I think they will upload on the website also. Yeah. So what is the gross carrying value? This is the one question. I don't know what is.
Gross carrying value from basically from the first clause they are talking about?
Yes.
So that is the gross carrying value in the fixed assets, where, as we all know, that is the gross amount which comes in the gross block. If I'm right in understanding the query, I'm not sure whether I'm right in understanding.
This has been asked by Saras Bhutoria. And
the gross carrying value is obviously the amount, because the immovable property has various additions to it. If an immovable property is purchased, it's just not the purchase consideration. It is the various additions which are made to the immovable property, like the stamp duty value, then the various incidental costs, the brokerages being paid to buy that property. So all that merged becomes the gross carrying value of the asset. So if I'm rightly in understanding, that is the gross carrying value.
Yeah, that's it. I can see in the question box. So, but if anyone can ask, so we are here for another 5 minutes. So people are appreciating. It's a very informative session. Recording, yes, definitely recording will be available.
It's okay. I think I was pretty good in explaining, so there are no queries.
Of course. that I can sure.
I can be happy and presume that.
But I can witness also. So what do you feel? I think audit trail is further extended, right?
Yes, that has been extended. I think because of that is the reason, because every company, they are not maintaining such softwares, because ERP is still not being widely used by whoever the companies who are using ERP. They are definitely having that facility of audit trail. But the companies who are largely, so many companies, even now we see that largely many companies still they are following Tally. Obviously, Tally company has come up with the updation to include the maintenance of audit log. So, but that training needs to be given to the staff. There are so many aspects to it. As the people are used to making backdated entries and modifications, we all know.
So maybe it will take some more time.
So obviously government also understands that. So they always give that, the parallel running kind of thing. So 1 year they can parallelly run and see whether properly audit trails are maintained or not. And then the implementation can become mandatory.
Yeah. So I can see Sri Priya Madam is here. So I recognize the presence.
You're most welcome to take a few more questions. I have no problem at all.
So we are just, the question is also ended.
So Sri Priya ma'am, the people have understood the presentation so well. They have not asked many queries. Good for me.
Absolutely. No,
I can say this is the appreciation. It's a very very good session, informative session. Fantastic, fabulous. I can read it from the chat box.
And actually, it's a new topic, so many of the practicing CAs have already, read in depth, because they have to apply that for the ensuing audit season. So already people have read it very nicely. Mostly everybody has studied Tarot 2020.
I feel so they must be busy in audit also.
Exactly. So true.
So I would request our Chairman, Women Member Empowerment Committee, Sri Priya Madam, for her address to the participants for the few words or something.
So sure. Thank you so much. And to my Vice Chairman, CA Preeti Savla, who's also my Vice Chairman on the Corporate Laws Committee, and I should say Chairperson. It's the latest thing that's around the place. Call it Chairperson. So Preeti, who's sort of organizing these programs extremely well, very, very passionately doing it. From the way she designs a brochure, so I believe most of these things, Preeti does it extremely well, and she's very meticulous about it. And I know the kind of effort it takes to organize something. CA Abhay Chajarji, who's here as a special invitee, CA Meenakshi Gupta, and whom I had the opportunity to hear a little bit on Caro, C Shivanisha, whom I've had the opportunity to read about, and the only thing I can tell you is we're super proud of you. I did, in fact, this whole thing came up because I happened to catch a letter that was written by the Prime Minister to your father. And that sort of set the ball rolling. And he said, we must locate her. And very coincidentally, your mail also arrived. And so it happened. And all I can say is super proud. And that's about it. And we know what kind of an effort it takes. And I've read your story. To the coordinators, Shweta Jain and Sneha Varia. Thank you so much to everybody for having made this session a very, very memorable one. And I've also requested the secretary of the committee and to Ruchi, who's a special thanks to Ruchi for this effort, to actually pick out the speakers from these sessions and sort of upgrade them to national platforms. So we possibly pick out the best speakers, and all of them. In fact, that's going to be a difficult task because everybody who spoke on this forum is so articulate and so well informed. So we do intend to sort of upgrade, because I think we certainly need a lot more women speakers. For some reason, I keep only seeing a lot more men, and I think we're as good and we should be there as well. So given that I have a few minutes time, I just thought I'd wrap up on the Caro as well. So Caro, I've said this before, there are very few legislations which are proactive. All rules, changes, laws are reactive. It's reactive to a particular way a society has behaved or misbehaved. The Companies Act was no exception. When Companies Act 2013 came in, it was no exception. It was a very dramatic and a very transformational legislation on what you were expected to be and how you were expected to behave if you're a joint stock company. So I think in that same breath, Caro is no exception. So there are two ways to look at Caro. Well, is it that we have not done a lot, that we've got such a elaborate Caro and an elaborate Schedule 3 that's happened? Or is it a story of the government saying, look, where can I place my trust? I can place it on a chartered accountant. And I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. As a profession, we need to meet expectations which are becoming very, very different from what we were originally made out to be in 1949 when the CA Act was created. But I also think amongst, there has been a lot of challenge. In fact, this is going to be a year when all institutional frameworks, in my opinion, are going to be constantly challenged. Today, SEBI is being challenged. ICAI in some sense is being challenged. All the regulators will now have to, look at transforming themselves, both in terms of legislation and in terms of catching the digital wave and accelerating digital absorption for better governance. So, and in that context, I find the CARO very, very interesting in a few respects. One, the Schedule 3 today, which forms the basis for your CARO. It's your Schedule 3 and your financial statements which form the basis for CARO. And CARO itself, if you notice, got deferred for implementation by a year because the fraternity went back and said, you've not mandated these aspects to be reported by the management. So how can an auditor comment on it? So the government said, yes, that's a good point. And so they amended Schedule 3. And now the CARO has got notified with a new Schedule 3 for implementation for financial statements commencing on or after April 1, 2022. Now, I think more than reading the CARO as, having to do an audit, I think that's my point number one. It would do a lot of good if we understood what the intent of a particular clause is. So that's my first sort of key take on the subject. Please understand why that question is being asked. A question is being asked because it impairs an asset or may require a reassessment of a liability, reassessment of an asset or a liability in the balance sheet. The second thing is, when read with Schedule 3, it's very, very transformational. Schedule 3 by itself has changed the contour of reporting, in my opinion, from financial reporting to management reporting. Typically, when would you talk about aging of CWIP? You would talk about it in management reporting. Where would you talk about ratios? You would talk about it in management reporting. But today, I see a very definitive view, in an act of wanting more transparency and more clarity on financial statements. It's altered this whole thing to a framework of management reporting rather than just financial reporting. The third very interesting theme that emerges is the solvency versus liquidity debate. As auditors, we were always responsible for solvency, right? So, assets, liabilities, capital, going concern. Today, there also seems to be possibly after ILFS, there also seems to be a lot of emphasis on liquidity. Why would look at a clause that says, based on an auditor's understanding plus management discussions, etc., whether the company's assets are adequate to meet short-term liabilities which are happening within 1 year. Look at a clause like stock and book debts reporting. I listened to Meenakshi speak to it. Why is the government coming back and telling us you better make sure that your stock and book debt reports that you furnish, which is what they're talking about, quarterly returns, etc., why should they be aligned to financials? Because somebody just gave stock and book debt reports at 15 crore stock, whereas the book stock was only 100 crore, was only a crore or a crore and a half. So it's in these contexts that I think it's extremely important to understand the why of the CARO before you proceed to do the what of the CARO. So with this, I wrap up on CARO, and of course, I have to speak something about C Shivanisha as well. So very often in life, we tend to contain ourselves to domains that we operate in. Maybe a few of us, like Preeti, for example, or me, for example, have chosen to do something else as well. In terms of my own personal experience, I'm very fond of reading books. So if I wasn't doing all this, I would be reading. I found that one external diversion, in addition to your profession and to your family, gives you that high. So after Shivani, possibly I've been thinking, every time I see a kettlebell, I think of Shivani, and I'm just wondering if I need to get into a routine as well. So maybe Shivani will do another private session for us in this regard. So I think the sky is not the limit. And in fact, I love the theme that's been designed for this entire series of women presenting to women audience, a largely women audience, which is sky high. I think it's very important that your sky should not only be high, but I think it should be a very expansive blue sky. I'm very fond of a particular line. It's by an author called Jack Kerouac. Read him if you can. It's from a book that's called On the Road. So it's basically a Beatles generation book. And then he goes on to say something in these lines. He says, I saw my life as an open, empty, glowing page, and I could fill it up with whatever I wanted. And that, ladies and a few gentlemen whom I'm sure are in this audience, is what life is all about. Your life is an open, empty page, and you can fill it up with whatever I want. And I think that's the essence of life. And in that context, I'd like to close from where I began, which was with C Shivanisha. It's a life that's very beautifully run, and thanks for being an inspiration. And thanks for having addressed this session today. Had other commitments, but I am certainly going to read. Incidentally, I go through all the recordings of these programs. I will certainly go through Meenakshi's and Shivanisha's as well. And thank you so much for being here. A wonderful evening, and have a great journey ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shri Priya Madam, for wrapping up a Caro in a very quickly manner, and you touched upon very important points. Thank you. Thank you so much, and completely agree. Sky should be really, really expensive for us. Yeah. So, coming to Meenakshi Madam, thank you so much. It's really my pleasure to propose a very well-deserved vote of thanks to you for your excellent deliverables on Caro, recent amendments and applicability of new Caro, because this is applicable for this financial year 21-22, which we are going to audit. So it was much needed subject, I can say, and you have explained very well manner all the provisions, very lucid manner, and I'm sure our participants must have been benefited from your talk. So thank you so much for your time and valuable deliverables. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for your words of encouragement, Shweta, and hope I did justice to the topic. Thank you very much.
Sure, 100%. So, Ruchi, are you there? Can we close it for the day?